Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering What We Do in the Shadows, Season 4, Episode 3, The Grand Opening. In this episode, we meet a new vampire and we find out about what they think of entertainment types, which is really interesting. And I am enjoying greatly the dynamic between Laszlo and Guillermo as it pertains to baby Colin. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Max for commissioning this episode. This is a really, really fun one. I knew that the actual club stuff was going to be a good time. I do wish, though, that we had gotten to see more of what went into the designing of the club, because it's pretty, happening. When we see the inside of it, I was, impressed. And I'm certain nobody gives a shit but me. So to a point, I'm like, I get it. It's not what anyone else is into, and why would they? But for my own reasons, I'm just like, oh, I would have liked to see this. We start off right away with Nadja in her getup that she is wearing to the opening night. And she is stoked, by the way, because there is a pretty long line. She is not wrong about that. There's a lot of people here. That was my main concern, was that nobody was going to show up. But I should have realized that with these guys, anytime they fuck up, it's much more public, so it would make sense that if it didn't go well, it was going to turn out to be in front of everybody. And I'm sorry if you can hear that creaking. That's my old ass headphones. But yeah, her outfit is giving me Lady Gaga a little bit. Less daring, though, if I'm being honest. So she's got a black lace-up dress, a regular floor-length dress. It's not modern in any sense. The outer portion is a lot more modern. She's got a red puff-sleeved floor length sort of duster, I guess. I don't want to call it a jacket exactly, but I guess it is. And she has red gloves that go up to meet the sleeves so that it's all one long piece, because they're the exact same shade of red. So it looks like, all one piece of cloth. And then she has black nails glued to the exterior of the gloves, which is that's a look that I actually really enjoy. And I know that it doesn't really hold up to any real scrutiny when you look at it. It's just a strange thing, but I've always kind of liked it as a style choice. There's something about it that I find really pulls it together somehow, and it can be done wrong. But I really, really liked this. So she has this puff sleeve thing, and it's got a popped collar, and there's a sort of cape back to it. But then right around the waist, it comes in cinched with a gold sparkly belt. And she also has gold sparkly eyeshadow, and she has two She has two sparkly red top hats. It took me a moment to quite clock the fact that she's got two, and I really, really like this. I don't know what, it's better. It's just better, and I approve, and I like it. So that's her look. She's really going for it. She's in the line, going and greeting everybody, telling folks how great they look, excited to see people. And then she announces that Richie Suck is going to be here. And she explains that he is the greatest vampire rap artist of all time. And we get to see some really awesome photos of him, like with his fans and on stage and whatnot. And everyone knows throat juice. Gonna bust loose on the club roof, sucking throat juice. It's like it's Grey Goose. Genuinely delightful. And she says that he hasn't performed or put out any music for 10 years, which we find out what's going on with that. So this is his first live performance in a decade, and just a major get, you know, like a huge, huge deal. And she is so, you guys, I really was glad that despite the fact that things go pretty badly wrong for a bit at the end, it feels as if we get a sort of happy ending for Nadja anyway. I was really worried. She's so proud and excited at the beginning of this episode that it was just going to crash and burn immediately. And I have no doubt that because these vampires are mostly losers, things are still going to go wrong, and maybe ultimately it will close. But at this time, we're still going, and it seems like opening night wound up being weirdly a success after all, despite itself. So I'm going to just hope that this is what we're going to continue on with. So what we've got is her trying to build anticipation in the crowd by making everybody wait for another hour or two. I really want to know where did you get this information, Nadja? Whose idea was it to go and make everybody wait that long? And granted, they're vampires, so maybe their concept of time is slightly different. But from what I have seen, I do not get the impression they're particularly patient. And she gets everybody hyped like she's about to let them into the club, and then tells them that you're still going to have to wait. And just immediately everybody is just kind of like, oh, come on. And it doesn't seem like she looks at the camera and sort of grimaces when she realizes the reaction everybody's having. But I'm like, yeah, you see the reaction. You see that it's not good. Why would you not change your approach? And I would leave. I would definitely leave. So she goes inside, and this is when we get our first glimpse. There's like some beds and things like off to the sides when you first walk in. It's like flanked by two, looks like king beds. We've got lots of standing cocktail tables that are lit up from the inside. A couple of signs that say Nadja's, pretty well designed signs. And this is sort of like, it feels the anteroom, like all of these tables and stuff. There's the places seems to be divided into two sections. And we've got like the sort of, what I would imagine is like the lower key, maybe like sexy section, the section. And then we have the dancing area. And that is the spot with the bar and a lot of lighting. And this is a conversation that she has with Nandor. And you guys, there's this really bad, dumb joke that keeps being played here. And I'm like, a part of me is just like, do I like this? It's not actually funny, but it's almost like the fact that it's not funny is what kind of makes it funny after all, if you get what I mean. So Nandor is down in the dumps, and he says that his wife is upstairs, that he's giving her some space. And he says that I have used the gin to make her even more perfect. He says, you should see the modifications we've done to her ass. And she says, ass, but whatever you want to call it, it's now perfect. The problem is, and Nadja keeps saying, but, and he's like, but ass. And this is a joke that comes up a little bit later. Guillermo says something about irony, and he's like, not iron, gold, keep up. Oh my God. It's so bad, you guys. It's so bad. It's very bad. He says, I am just worried that I am not perfect enough for her. And Nadja says, well, it's not too late to do some modifications to yourself to make you more perfect and worthy of her love. And he says, oh my God, that's a really good point. And I was like, what she means is that you could do something to enhance your appearance, perhaps. Like, no, immediately what he goes for is penis enlargement. We'll be there in a moment. At this time, evil Mabel, who has amazingly permed hair for the evening, gets a note that Richie Suck is canceling. And so the two of them make an emergency trip to his loft, I guess, if you want to call it. It's a smokestack that he lives inside. And when they get to the door and knock, his familiar answers and doesn't even want to let him in or let them in. And he's like got something set up here almost like it's a speakeasy with a little one of those little like slots that you like open and you can only just see out of. But eventually Richie calls out, come in, and they have to come in. His familiar is very irritated. His familiar is played by Fred Armisen, I think is his name. Character, or an actor that I have really enjoyed some of his work. Some of it has been extremely unfunny. And then I have since found out that he himself is actually kind of a huge creep, which is a major bummer. So just do with that what you will. But I just thought I would mention it. And he is just taking control of Richie. And it's this is reminding me of The Idol. It's those of you who are not in the know, it's a show that HBO has put out. It has been mercilessly panned by like everybody who has seen it. And it makes sense because before the show ever aired, I saw an article about the way that the show was rewritten halfway through the season. Originally, it had a different showrunner, and it was a woman, and they had like all of these restrictions about how much time she had and what her budget was that were very aggressively enforced to a point that it felt like she was being set up to fail. And then when things started to really go left, The Weeknd showed up because he was being cast, but he wanted to like really assert his ideas, and she wasn't wanting to do what he was suggesting. And they wound up basically being like, well, if you don't want to do what he's saying, then you can just find another job. And she was like, bet. And she did leave. And then the showrunner that came on for it was the one who did Euphoria. And apparently him and The Weeknd both like rewrote huge chunks of the script to make it. It had been originally a story that was about a woman who was exploited, finding her place and being empowered and learning to like draw a line and boundaries. And they did away with all of that and really just made it about how she's being exploited, but she likes it. And everybody who was interviewed about it was just like, yeah, it's super gross now. And if I could have left, I would have, but I didn't have another job lined up and I had to do what I had to do. It is extremely misogynistic and just really like male gazing now in a way that it wasn't before. The script had been extremely compelling, and now there are parts of it that feel like a parody of itself. And that's what I have heard it is, actually. So that's what The Idol's about, just those of you who are interested. So this is just giving me that vibe, because that she's sort of being like managed by someone who's essentially the leader of a cult, really. And this dude is not on that level, but he is like definitely controlling Richie. He has eaten away at Richie's self-confidence. When they're talking to Richie about like, why are you letting Tom talk to you like this? He says, Tom protects me from myself, so you need to be respectful. And I love Nadja's reaction. She's just so grossed out. The whole idea that she would show this guy respect. And he keeps insisting on being called Dr. Tom. And he's got this like backward golf cap and like a patterned shirt with like another patterned shirt over it. It's really a look. It's definitely giving somebody who's trying extremely hard to seem like on trend, and it feels sort of sad, you know, like, and this dude is the reason we wind up finding out that Richie, I just can't get over the name. The fact that his name is Richie, it just doesn't feel right. The reason that he has gone into seclusion and hasn't made any more music, and what he had been going to do was like come out and play music that was with Tom's jazz band. That was like what he was working on. And thank God he doesn't do that, but it almost is worse what he does do. So let's just jump over here to baby Colin. He has got a YouTube channel, Colin Knowles. I don't think I ever knew that was his last name. If it is, 2 subscribers, very exciting. And he is showing off this like village from Infinity Wars that he made. You guys, this is just honestly adorable. I know that it's so lame and I don't care. It's just so, it's cool, right? And we jump back and forth between him and showing this off and Guillermo talking about how fast Colin is growing and that he like outgrows his shoes between breakfast and lunch. And Laszlo walks in on this film that's, you know, that he's making for his YouTube and goes over to Guillermo and is just like, what the fuck is this? And Guillermo's like, why are you accusing me? I didn't do anything. He's just doing this because he enjoys it. And Laszlo's like, I want him to be interesting. I grow up like, you know, interested in fine art and in culture. What is this boring bullshit? And Guillermo says, this isn't like boring to him. He's a kid. He likes Legos and Roblox and Nerf guns and music. You guys, this was so great because if you've listened to my show, I mention on pretty much all of them how much I hate musical theater. And this is not me trying to be like edgy, because I went to school for musical theater, which is how I discovered that I don't like it. I thought I liked it because when I was in high school, I performed in a couple of shows and I had a really good time. Looking back, I realized I just liked one, performing at all, being the center of attention, big fan. But also, I really enjoyed the like flirting and parties and like sort of really like fake friendships that develop. I say fake in as much as any friendships that you develop in high school are fake. You know what I'm saying? That's not to say that all friendships are, but like when you are in high school, you become friends with people out of necessity a lot of the time because there's just so many people to pick from and you've got to have some friends. So you just go with the folks that you can like stomach, you know? And that was what I liked. And the actual scripts were so bad. The music was often bad or like at least just corny. And as I thought that the more I got to know musical theater, I would find like gems. And they're out there, but they're like really difficult and not something that I was always like up to doing. I'm not a great dancer. And I just started to realize more and more like what I'm going to be up to doing are the shows I don't like that are really problematic or just tooth-achingly sweet. And I really had like a crisis where I was like, well, what do I do? Because I was kind of putting all my eggs in the performance basket. And when I realized, like, this isn't for me, actually, podcasts were not yet a thing. Now I'm very happy with what I'm doing and feeling like, yeah, this is it. But I didn't have this even as an option for quite a while after leaving school. So, Martin says, my sister used to be a techie working behind the scenes in high school. She loved it. I did tech too. I went to Carnegie Mellon for tech before I switched to musical theater, actually. And yeah, tech stuff, God, that's another one. Tech is like, there goes a career that they're like, either this becomes your entire life for 80 hours a week, or you aren't serious about it. And I was like, I guess I'm not. Thank you. Goodbye. And Laszlo picks up on the fact that he starts to say, what was that? Okay. He really loves musical theater. And Laszlo is like, oh my God. And maybe it's good for him. It's art, no different than literature or the cinema. It's not like any other art. Musical theater is the lowest of all entertainments. It's gutter pantomime performed by half-wits with painted faces, enjoyed by lower wits. You guys, I'm so sorry, but like mostly I do agree with this. There are exceptions. There are a few exceptions. But like, and of course, Guillermo, maybe some, but have you seen Rent? From you, not a penny. Rent sucks. Just saying. The one show that I will say has, if anything, gotten better. I don't know how many folks out there have not already watched Steven Spielberg's rendition of West Side Story. But it is pure brilliance. The only problem is the leading man, who is not only a creep, but not a great actor, and sort of drags things down when he's on screen. But thankfully, he isn't a lot. And even when he is, other people are, it seems like they knew he was a bit of a liability and they focus on others as much as they can. But the performances are unbelievable. And the change in interpretation in some of the numbers are, there's a couple of things. I'm so sorry. I know I'm deviating here, but just really, really quick, because I loved it so much and I didn't expect to. I was already excited for the redo because the original West Side Story is a bunch of white people wearing orange makeup, pretending to be Spanish, and it's super offensive and gross, and it's just like always bummed me out. But in this, they have them speaking Spanish frequently, no subtitles. They're just basically like, if you know, you know, if you don't, sorry, which I kind of admire. And then there's the scene, stay cool, boy. They have that song, like the set piece for it is that they are fighting over the gun in such a way that it is a lot more understandable where the tension is coming from, because they're like each about to grab it from one another, and they're in a building that's like teetering and ready to collapse at any minute. And it's just so well done. And I was watching it with my mouth hanging open, like, this is such a great idea. And then Officer Krupke, if you're not going to watch the new West Side Story in its entirety, the only thing that I can urge is that you go to YouTube and find the new Officer Krupke, because that is a number that in the original was really played for laughs. And he has it filled with rage. And it's funny in oh, that's so true. But like, these kids are fed up and angry. And the whole number, it feels like they're getting more and more worked up, ready to just unleash on somebody and beat the hell out of them. And there's a part where they're just like supposed to be joking around, smacking each other in the face, and they're going like a little too hard, and you're kind of like, oh God. But none of them is like mad at the other because they all seem to know where they're coming from, and they destroy the room that they were in. It's so good, you guys. Like, I'm just getting chills thinking about it. It's one of the best updates to anything that I have watched. And granted, I haven't watched a lot because I don't like a lot, but I really, really recommend it. So anyway, oh God, you guys, it's so good. It's so good. So Guillermo is trying to say, this is who he is. You've got to learn to accept it. And as they're fighting about this, Colin comes into the room, or comes around the corner, really, because they're kind of in the hall outside the room. And both him and Guillermo have to, like, Laszlo and Guillermo have to sort of straighten up and act cool. And this is, like, it's really fun because Guillermo's playing the part of the mom who loves her kid no matter what, and is attempting to get the father, who has a very specific idea of what this kid should be into, on board with the fact that maybe your kid isn't just going to be a reflection of everything that you personally would like him to be. And I just really loved the way that Guillermo, like, stands with his hands on his hips and, like, the expression on his face, and he's like, what a star. He's just doing a really good job of, like, imitating the moms that go a bit too hard with the supporting their child thing, you know, like, it's almost gooey the way that he's acting. It's very good. I just really liked it. And we jump ahead to Laszlo with his foot braced against the edge of a skylight, and he's got Colin on a rope, and he's lowering him down into a museum. And I love this particular joke. I don't know, you know, I have to imagine this is like a writer who decided that he was going to include something from his own life. But what Colin keeps saying is, hey, guess what? Over and over again, to preface his sentences. Y'all, I have been around very few children in my life since growing up. But the, hey, guess what, is such a real thing. I don't know what it is, but they do genuinely start every sentence this way, as if they're gonna surprise, when they're just trying to tell you any, like, it's just the way that Laszlo reacts. It's so understandable to me. And I saw reflected in him when he kind of snaps and it's just like, just say what the fuck you're gonna say. Colin, like, shuts down and goes, oh, okay, I'm sorry. And immediately Laszlo crumples and feels like such an asshole. And this is just how I feel with the dogs. I yell at them because they did something, but then they look up at me with their smiley dog faces, and all of a sudden I feel like a monster for yelling at them. Like, there's been a couple exceptions where what they have done has been egregious enough that I'm like, no, you're not guilting me. You deserve to be yelled at right now. But mostly I find myself completely, like, turning into a soft ball of clay that they can mold as they like. And he's talking about knolling, which I guess I didn't realize that, but his name is Colin Knoll on his YouTube. So I guess that's a reference to this thing. I don't even think he ever gets to fully explain what it is that he's, like, talking about, though. But so Laszlo has this, like, powder that he sprays into the air to show where the lasers are. He does this, like, elaborate dance to go through the lasers, which I really like, the fact that a lot of the lasers are not even exactly where he's, like, jumping, because they were added with CGI after, right? I'm assuming. And so they just put them wherever and have him doing these ridiculous things that don't really need to be done. So when I got the Stranger Things Lego set, I used it to make the library and the Music Man, which is, boy, we don't have time for this right now. Okay, but Laszlo, guess what? So this is when he basically snaps. He's got the knife in his hand. He's about to cut through the glass and get this statue out. It looks like it's a Venus of Willendorf or something. The set broke, so I shoved all the pieces under the bed. Okay, fair enough. Now can we continue with the crime? And he starts to be like, yeah, sure. And then just walks straight through the lasers. And Laszlo is like, motherfucker, as the alarm goes off, and grabs him and just flies up back through the skylight. And, this is what happens when you have a kid that isn't interested in the thing that you want. You can do all these things to make it look exciting. It's just not going to happen. I am like this, and I'm a grown-ass woman. A kid, they got better things to do, man. They do. They just do. So, what Nandor has decided, he says, I'm going to do some work on myself. Guillermo thinks being more present and being a better listener. And Nandor is like, are you fucking kidding me? No, I wish to have the world's biggest penis. Now, he is saying this to the djinn, who immediately starts to be like, your wish is my command. But Guillermo jumps in and is like, hey, so here's the thing. Djinns like to be a little bit tricky. And it is certainly possible that he will do something fucked up and technically fulfill your wish, but it will not be what you wanted or intended. And he will know that, but he's going to do it anyway. And this, I was talking about this in the last episode, how every one of us, I think, has fantasized about, like, if we had a genie, how we would phrase the things that we're asking for so that there could be no, like, screwing us over. And so it was kind of fun to see the myriad of ways that they decide to handle this here, because they are really, really cautious, thanks to Guillermo, who is really imaginative in all of the different ways that this guy could potentially take the specifics of what they're asking for and, like, find a loophole in it. And I really like that it replaces my current penis and not be an additional one or an extra penis attached to the end of the one that I currently own. And eventually he's like, okay, we really need to be writing this stuff down. So they go to do that. And then we jump back over to Nadja, and she is trying to give a blood pack to Richie as a token. And his fucking familiar takes it and says he's not hungry. That's in your mind. It's just a little sip. It's not feeding time. And both Nadja and Evil Mabel are outside going, okay, yeah, we're definitely going to need to kill him. This is truly upsetting. Like, the fact that this is happening is so gross. And I really like Evil Mabel being on Nadja's side. Like, them being at odds with each other is fun as well. But I enjoy both of them being just as horrified by this and 100% backing each other with, oh yeah, this guy's dead for sure. Like, that's got to happen. We'll wait until after the show because we don't want to fuck that up. But 100%. And this, I'm going to jump back to Guillermo and the things that they are saying. It should be in the usual place between the legs and not in a separate container, such as a jar or a briefcase, and not on my chin. The chin is writing everything down. And they have a talking head moment. And he's like, well, I do go through this a lot, but I haven't ever dealt with two people who are this detail oriented. And what they are doing is correct, but it's very annoying. And just the fact that he says what they're doing is correct. I really like the fact that he can admit that and sort of seems to respect it. But it's just like, oh man, I just want to get this done. I want to get home, you know? So Guillermo, again, he keeps like stepping in when it seems almost as if we're finally done. And there's a moment, and I was like so glad that that Nandor like notices this later. In the moment, I noticed it and I was like, no, but it was too late. But pretty quickly, it seems like it occurs to him. So he's about to do the thing, and Guillermo says you can't give him the world's largest penis by making everyone else's smaller. And the Jin genuinely looks so bummed out. And he leans back and just says, shit. I mean, well done. I was moments away from giving every man in the world but Nandor a micro wang. And he seems to really mean it. I thought maybe he was fucking with them. I think he means it. Nandor, why would you do such a thing? Oh, it's just part of the job, I guess. I teach lessons about greed, desires, etc. by fucking with the wishes of my so-called masters. But you two have bested me. Your familiar has a very shrewd and incisive mind when it comes to the penis stuff. So I think he, like, maybe is just... I think trying to get them off guard by flattering them that they're out of danger of making a mistake, like that they overlooked something. Because this is when Nandor says, thank you, Guillermo. I appreciate all your help. And every time I use my new big dick, I will think of you and all you've done for me. This is your wish. This is my wish. And I was like, no, too late. Wish granted. And Nandor stands up and unzips and looks at it. Apparently, it's only 20% larger than what he used to have. And the Jinn expresses some surprise that he wanted to go any larger at all, because he really was like, that seemed sufficient. I don't know. But okay. Nandor seems extremely happy with it. And then he goes down to the club and he says, oh, Guillermo, I wish that every time I use my dick, I will think about you. That's what he did. That's how he fit the like little trick in there. And I am super interested to see how this winds up working out, because that's going to be a bummer. And like, what does that mean? Is this going to turn into like inadvertently a sexual like attraction due to this? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I don't even know if that's what like Guillermo wants, but I was so heartbroken because it felt like they almost got away with it. So we go to the club. And I love the fact that Tom's friends they're playing the jazz without him on the stage. He's like with Richie, and everybody is getting very impatient. Somebody throws a glass at them, and it's like unclear to me whether his friends are aware this is a vampire club. I don't know what they're thinking otherwise, but they seem a little bit nervous about the situation and are sort of looking over at him like, what's going on, dude? What do we do? And he comes out on stage and, you guys, I'm so sorry. I just realized when Nandor tells Guillermo that, I thought it was because it had just occurred to him. I didn't realize, I somehow missed it, that he is here with his wife and she's telling him it's perfectly normal. He doesn't know because he figured it out. He knows because he just tried to use it and it immediately, oh no. Oh, that's sucks. Oh, that's too bad. So apparently he couldn't keep it up. That's such a shame. Because it's not even like when you fuck. It's every time you use it, which would also mean masturbation. That's really limiting. Oh boy. Oh boy. Well, so this is when Nadja introduces Richie Suck. And he comes out on stage. He's wearing like this really great outfit. He's got this hoodie, like sleeveless hoodie on, but he also has this white fur, like it's like I don't even know what to call it. It's not exactly a scarf. It's like a shawl, but it looks so dope, honestly. I really like this whole look. And he comes outside and says, before I start the show, I want to bring out a man who's been a really important part of that. And he's like thanking Tom and then starts talking about the collaborative music, but that he isn't going to do it after all. And Tom begins to interrupt and he grabs Tom and throws him into the crowd and begins chanting, "Eat that bitch." Which, considering that Guillermo had just been going, woo, familiars in the audience, when the camera goes back to him, he's kind of got his hands like under his armpits and looking a little bit flipped out because, yeah, it sort of could become a feeding frenzy that goes after you as well. So watch out for that. So Richie then starts to be like, do you want to hear some new material that you've never heard before? And he says, I'm going to do some observational comedy. And everyone's like, what? Have you ever been flying around as a bat and you get hit by a drone? And nobody is like responding to any of his jokes. It's like I was sort of thinking, what if it works? What if his observational, because it's about vampires specifically, maybe they'll be into it after all, and it'll be like really offbeat for what he normally does, but it'll still work. No, it does not. Somebody actually asks for the jazz back, which I was like, that's particularly bad. And finally, things begin to really devolve. Some folks are climbing up on the stage, throwing things, and one of them like slams into Nadja and throws her down into the crowd. And finally, all of a sudden, Colin Robinson climbs on the stage. Now, apparently, he's wearing tap shoes. I don't know where he found them. It does not matter. We're just going to roll with it. But he begins doing a tap number and is singing a song, and he tells us where it's from, but I don't remember. And the jazz guys are picking up, oh, here it is, from the 1936 movie musical Born to Dance. And they are playing along with him, and he is doing like a whole little literal song and dance. And I'm like, they're way more into this than I would expect. And then we go to Nadja as a talking head. Vampires have always loved child novelty acts. I mean, who knows why? Some say they're transfixed by the youth and innocence they themselves lost long ago. Others just love how creepy and exploitative it is. Oh, God, that's such a good line. But yeah, she's basically like, he's saving my business, so that's great. I am not mad about it. And we go, like spend the rest of the episode with the crowd like mollified by this, but nobody. I saw Richie. He's in the crowd just applauding, and I was sort of wondering if he was going to jump back up and decide to perform after all. And it seems like maybe he's kind of done with that part of his life. I don't know. Maybe not. We'll see. But I haven't mentioned it again up to this episode, but like the fucking CGI that they're doing on Colin to get his face on this kid's body is so bad, you guys. And I really think that's part of the point. Like they're doing that on purpose. But oh my God, I really found it like upsetting. There's like more than one spot where I was just like, oh God, that looks weird. At one point, Laszlo has locked him in a dumpster and says he can't come out until he's killed at least 6 rats. But when he opens the dumpster, Colin's just got a bunch of rats crawling like right beside him and is talking about some other like playbill that he found for a musical that somebody threw away. And so what it looks like we're doing is Colin used to be boring in a very specific way. And it was a very like office sort of energy. He was a bureaucrat. He liked, you know, everything to be basic as possible. And now we're doing like just a different type of basic. I am extremely curious what else we're going to get out of baby Colin. He's going to be draining still, apparently, but in a way that is different than he was. And there's a lot of possibilities for this. Like, I'm kind of looking forward to it. So who knows? And as far as like Nadja's club, is this, I can't tell. I think that Martin is still in the chat. Martin, I didn't even see this. I'm so sorry. He said baby Colin's verbal tick reminded me of my little cousin's never shutting up. Ooh, big mood. I find it hilarious how Guillermo and Nandor's subplot basically morphs into a parody of courtroom dramas. I didn't even think of that, but I like that. But Martin, is this the last season of the show? Did they say that this was going to be the final season? I can't remember if that was ever specifically mentioned or not. Because I would like, if we're going to get our druthers here, is for this to be the way that our crew like kind of wraps, like we do have them staying with the nightclub as their like source of income, and this being a thing that is their sort of stamp on the city, the way that they made a name for themselves finally, you know, because they have just not succeeded at anything. And as much as the joke is that they're losers and that they just constantly lose, I wouldn't mind a little bit of a success, even if there is something kind of janky about it. And, oh, okay. Martin says season 5 will start airing in August this year, if I recall correctly. Wow. Soon. God damn. I didn't know they were getting yet another season. I'm genuinely surprised. I'm not mad about it. Like, you guys know, this feels like a deep well. There's so much you could do. But, yeah, I just, like, I feel like if we're getting another season, then the club is destined to probably fail because we have to have another thing. But the club could also just become a backdrop for lots of other shenanigans. You know, I don't know. It really depends on the way the writers want to do things, because it seems like mostly what we get is them attempting stuff and then like falling on their faces and eventually leaving that behind and trying a new thing. I don't know if they decide to do that with this. I think I'll be like a little disappointed, because just the whole concept of opening a nightclub is just a thing that I would love to do in theory, not in practice at all. Don't get me wrong. I know what that would mean, and no, thank you. But I would just kind of like it. Also, if Nadja like had her thing that she got to do, she's getting to do it, but I would like for her to have, a real chance, get a real shot at it. So, all right. Well, I'm a little early. I'm a little bit short on this episode, but I genuinely did talk about everything that happens. So, you know what the one thing is that I want to mention though? And I was going to talk about this earlier and I sort of cut myself off, but the fact that Nandor thinks that doing the penis enlargement thing is the way to go. You guys, I can't emphasize enough how much less important penis size is to women than men think it is. I'm not trying to say it's not important at all. because I have slept with a guy who really had nothing going on, and it was kind of tough because he didn't seem to know that he didn't. And so I was not feeling much. But other than that one particular exception, I have slept with lots of dudes who have just totally average dicks, and that's plenty. It's fine. Like, dudes are talking about, oh, I'm 8 inches. So who cares? The average woman's vagina is only like 5 inches deep. So if you've got more than that, what good is that? That's not doing anything for me. And honestly, if you are shorter and you are able to like grind your pelvis against the clit when you're in, that's better than like only being able to go with like a few extra inches to spare and there being all this like dead space. So I'm just saying it's really not the thing. Like, I think something like 70% of women don't orgasm through P and V sex anyway. They orgasm through clitoral stimulation, which is not accomplished necessarily by penetration. So again, it doesn't matter because that's not how a lot of women even come. So who cares? So anyway, just the fact that this time has gone past and Nandor is as old as he is, and he still thinks that this like size is going to be the thing that makes her stay. I just feel like if you haven't learned by now, Nandor, that that's not the priority, I'm wondering if you're as good in bed as I would have thought you are. Because I would have put Nandor as being pretty good in bed. And I'm starting to be like, wow, maybe not actually. Maybe he's he's so like self-centered in his interactions with Guillermo and everything. But I always just assumed that it was like Guillermo was a particular case because he's a familiar. But maybe he's just like that, which is just disappointing, honestly. I expected better of you, Nandor. I wonder this a lot, though, in general, like also about Laszlo. Laszlo is sex obsessed. Is he good in bed, though? Genuinely can't decide. I don't know. I feel like I want to say he has to be. But God knows there are men out there who are sex obsessed and just still don't know what they're doing. So, Martin says, I assume that none of the vampires are actually good in bed because of how selfish they each are. Maybe you're right. That's too bad. Aw. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap this up, but thank you again, Max, for commissioning this. I'm very interested in seeing where we're going. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.